Tom, thank you very much for joining me today on the What is a Good Life podcast. I must say, I've just been fawning over your book before we started recording, so I'm Unwinding Want. So I'm absolutely delighted to get the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to what emerges.
Uh, Wonderful. So, as you're aware, the question that I kick this off with is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Yeah, I was prepared for this because I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I really enjoy them. And yeah, there's one that I've been curious about and I guess exploring deeply my whole life, which is why do people believe what they believe and do what they do? And I think the reason that that question has always been on my mind is because I had a pretty, I'd call it incoherent childhood. I was born in the deep South in the United States in the late 50s. I was raised outside of Boston. Uh, and I've had many, many relatives and caregivers. And I would go back and forth from my home outside of Boston to my home down in Louisiana. And they were so very different. The religions were different, the foods were different, the culture, the economics, everything was just so different. And I could not really make any sense of any of it, and so there was really nothing to hold on to. There was no consistent pattern that it's kind of like no stable model of reality for me. I mean, just to give you a very, very simple, ridiculous example, back home, say in Boston, I was always told, put the eggs in the refrigerator. And then when I would go down south and I'd be at my grandfather's little dirt farm house, the eggs, after we got them from the chickens, we left on the counter. And it was puzzling to me, and I would ask questions and no one gave me answers. It was always, well, just do it this way. This is how it's done. And I mean, I finally had to look it up and find out why that behavior was like that. But I was also told ways to live. I was showed through these various people what they were doing and how they were living. But I didn't see any model that said, oh, yeah, I should live like Uncle, what's his name, or this person, or that coach, or that priest, or that minister. I couldn't find it. And so I finally realized, I think it was probably in high school, this is all invented. This is all made up. This, you know, it's make believe. It's people make it up and then they end up believing it. It's really interesting. So I've just been intrigued by the human condition. I guess I guess it was just an impulse that was wired into me because of that upbringing.
Wow, the first thing that came to mind there was, in some ways, I guess, what a gift.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an older daughter that tells me all the time that you were lucky to have that kind of childhood where you didn't get locked into a particular narrative and particular belief systems. And I think she's right. On the other hand, it does confuse you at times going through life. You can't lean on anything.
Just out of interest for you, then, did that lead to a searching for something to lean on, or did it? Was there a surrendering to it? I know you're talking about it at a young age, and then even this realization in high school. But just from your perspective, like, how did it feel to be operating between these, different beliefs, and then just I guess the realization that, oh, there isn't an answer here necessarily.
Yeah, that's a great question. I never thought of that before, Mark. But I would say that you hit on something because I've read thousands of books, spirituality, religion, history, anthropology. I mean, you name it. And that's probably why I've been reading these books. Is there's probably something in me that says it's there. If you can find it, it's probably in the next book. And now you've got something to lean on. You've got some stability, you know? And I'll tell you honestly, I've been reading fewer and fewer books because I think I've become aware of that this is what you're after. You're looking for it. It's in one of these books. And I think my mind is finally saying, hey, look, stop spending this money, on these books because it's a ridiculous search. And but yeah, that's a good point. I think that's why I do what I do to an extent.
Is just really, really love that sense of your mind is almost even saying, "What are we doing with these books?" What do you, what do you? 'Cause I think there's something in that there's something in experience of life when it's either experienced through a sense of feeling or being, that even the mind to me seems to kind of get on board. Like it realizes that there's something else to it, or some. I don't want to foreshadow that too much, but do you get me? Like I find it interesting when the mind even realizes its own place, so to speak, in the overall interaction with life.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I have a view about what the mind is doing, especially the thinking mind. And I think what it wants basically is for us to be comfortable and
Right.
and to be okay, to survive, right, without discomfort. And uh, it relies on the body to a large extent, these feelings in the body. You're thirsty, the thinking mind says, well, get a glass of water, and it doesn't really know the difference between these feelings that arise in us because we may have been conditioned. They're in us now. These feelings of discomfort are in us. So if we like people who tell me that they go to silent retreats and they're sitting there and they're losing their mind because they're at this retreat and they're in silence and their mind's going crazy. And the reason their mind's going crazy is because they've been conditioned not to sit quietly like that for too long, right? Because somebody probably told us when we were young, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there? Like, go paint the fence, go mow the lawn, whatever. At least my parents, whatever, right? So that's what the thinking mind is after. And I think this is a hypothesis that if you become comfortable with the search and you start realizing I don't have to search. And the thinking mind comes along with for that ride with you. It can sense you're comfortable. So it leaves you alone because it says, okay, he's okay. He's comfortable. The body's comfortable. You don't need to turn this thinking mind on and try to solve a problem because there isn't any. So I think that the thinking mind gets its orders from the fact that it feels through the body there's a problem, and my job as the thinking mind is to solve the problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's when you said there you don't have to search or something to that effect. I honestly felt like my heart or an expansion in my body or my chest. Um, I think this is a beautiful way to describe it because yeah, if from my perspective, the sense of okay, if I'm actually, there's something about knowing, and look, I've obviously read your book, so I'm not trying to just to to
No,
go into
no.
that, but the sense of there's something about knowing what I want in my body and responding to that, that almost relegates, or not relegates, but it takes the thinking mind out of the driver's seat almost. Like it can almost, or it reduces it to a role where it's trying to be in service now of what these wants, because they're so clearly felt. Like it's so clear that something is emerging that actually gets us to a place where we can feel in commune with the world rather than fighting it. And I think if we have an experience of being in a state of feeling like we're with the world, a part of it, I get the sense anyway that the thinking mind then kind of has to hold his hands up a little bit and go, okay, well, I was in control in my case for a long time and I never felt this.
Mm.
Something like that comes up for me.
Yeah. See, the interesting part is, as children, we are just feeling beings, and we know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. If we see someone being violent with someone else, there's a feeling in the body that says this is not right. This is
Yeah.
not good, you know? And over time, well, we're led to believe very early on that all of these feelings that we have and the impulses that we have, they're not necessarily right. It doesn't matter what it is. If we could be running and we can be told, "What are you doing? Don't do that. That's not right. That's dangerous. That's not good." Or we start singing spontaneously. "Quiet. You can't sing. Go sit down. Go do your homework." So we get led to believe very early on that these feelings that we have, which is what we're all about, they might not be right. So we need to really think carefully about what we're doing in order to get the feelings that we're looking for eventually, right? So through school, through work, through money acquisition, it doesn't matter what it is. We're led to believe this. And then we get to a point in our lives where now these conditioned feelings are inside of us. And we can't hold those back. We can't understand, why can't I just sit quietly? Why am I getting all anxious about just sitting? There's no problem going on here. And it's because those feelings were placed in us through this conditioning over time that says, you're not going to solve the problem by sitting still. Right? I mean, we have to solve it. We have to go out
Yeah.
and figure it out, figure life out and solve the problems. And that's the illusion that everyone's under. And we really do believe this. It's what drives everything. It's what makes the world go round right now. Unfortunately, the anxiety level is going up and everything else because we don't feel that we have control over the external world, which we never had anyway. But when things get chaotic, now we start feeling like, wow, we can't control this. It's really funny. It reveals the illusion that was there all along.
From your perspective, like, or even just the realization of, okay, look, these there's this group of people, or this, family here and family there, there's completely, or like there's completely different ways of interpreting certain things. There isn't a clear model. There may not be a clear model. There may not be something absolutely solid, or an answer to stand on. Where did that take you? Like, how did you kind of evolve with this, like from noticing that to even some of the things you're saying now? I know that's a very broad and and wide question, but to move into what you're talking about here, which is it it's interesting because in some ways it's almost heretical to the way things are done, right? Like,
Right.
and yes, the way things are done don't seem to be leading us to the greatest of places. Just from your perspective, like, how did you start to make some of these realizations, or when did the illusion start to reveal itself a little bit to you?
Well, I think what happened, Mark, is that my thinking mind would come on, to try to answer questions for me. And then it would look to the environment for answers. So to various people, in particular, and it didn't find anything coherent, and so it became very confused. And so I couldn't really rely on it. It was confused itself, right? It's kind of like you go out to AI, and again, and I refer to the thinking mind as artificial intelligence because it's getting all that information from typically authority figures that put the information in there. So that's its training data. And my mind would go up into its training data and say, okay, tell me what I should believe regarding God. And it would go up there and it would find all of this confusing information, right? And it didn't make any sense. And it would come back and with no answer, which would basically say to me, I don't know, you go search it out yourself, go figure it out. And I couldn't go figure it out either because I'd go out into the training data and see that it was all over the place, right? So at that point, I think what happened is I began to realize that when I placed myself into the world, because I was kind of released into the wild as a kid. A lot of us were back then, right? It was the door opened and you were told to be home for dinner when the street lights went on, whatever. And you just had to negotiate your way through this madness out there. But what you started to realize, if like me, you weren't getting these consistent, coherent answers from this thinking mind, you started to realize that how the world is operating and the reactions that you're seeing out there, they have very little to do with you. It has to do with everybody else and not you. And that creates this feeling that you're not the center of the world. You're just stepping into this madness and you're negotiating and responding to it. It's not about you. The minute your thinking mind starts telling you that this is the way it is, this is the way it should be, this is right, this is wrong, you're right, you're not good enough. Now the world becomes about you. You step into it and you feel like the center of everything, and you're looking at the world through your lens of, am I okay? Am I right? Am I wrong? Shouldn't I do this? Should I do that? But if you see the madness of it because you're not getting answers back, then you realize this isn't about me. This is what it is. And I'm just dancing with it the best that I can. And I'd like to say it's a relief, but it wasn't a relief to me because I never had the other perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was no relief. It didn't exist for me the way it did for a lot of people.
But this, the even alluding to almost the madness of that perspective of putting ourselves at the center of the universe. How, I guess, like, how did you feel then in like even experiencing that then as an adult? Did you go through your own iterations of this in terms of, were there moments where there were kind of attempts to control or to, like, to bend the world, to bend it into the shape that you wished? Or was this something that you were always holding lightly in terms of how you just approached life then, if you get me?
Yeah, I was aware of, I guess, my responsiveness, my interactions with the world. So I wanted to dance the best that I could, but I knew I wasn't in control of the dance. So I never felt like the dance was me. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I knew there were other people and everything, the environment and change. I knew that that was going on because that was kind of the kaleidoscopic lens that I grew up in, realizing, oh no, this isn't a particular way. And if that way starts getting out of control, that has something to do with you. Because I couldn't find the way. Now look, I'll let you in on something that I discovered late in life. I have this thing called aphantasia. I don't know if you've heard of this. I have a problem creating images in my mind, you
Right.
know, and so I've done some research on this, and I think that that has something to do with the fact that I don't really hold on to these narratives in my mind about the past or the future because I can't really conjure them. I can't see them. I talk to people and they tell me that they can see images in their mind about a meeting that they had a couple of days ago. That doesn't even make any sense to me. I can't create an image in my mind of an apple. And to have people say they can create images of scenes in their mind makes me realize how some people can get stuck in a narrative because they're seeing this movie in their head over and over. And I don't see any movies in my head about my past or anything. It happens and then it just kind of goes away. It fades away. If that makes any sense. So
No,
that that that
that
may
makes
have something to do with it as well.
yeah, but that sounds absolutely beautiful from the perspective of the like almost like a way of presence, even just with the like a less compelling image to be attached to or to be drawn to. Really love how you described though just a sense of a dance with life, and just from your perspective, like how does that, can you put more words to that even, I guess, like what like what are you like what do you sensing in this life, like what are you moving in relation to, like what do you, when you say a dance, like how do you kind of yeah, what are you, I guess, what are you sensing from that?
Yeah, this is so hard to describe. So imagine because you can't create these images in your head, that when you step into the world, whatever it is, everything kind of looks new because there isn't anything in your head that has habituated you to this thing. So you step into your backyard and it looks bright. It looks new because you don't have an image in your head. So you're like seeing it almost for the first time. And because of that, it just feels really interesting. Everything is interesting. The rocks on the ground are interesting. The bark on the tree is interesting, and that's the dance, is that everything that I do and everyone I meet, it just seems interesting to me because there's no, I have no goal. It's not like I'm
Yeah,
moving through the world looking for anything in particular. I'm just moving through the world and the images just hit me and they become interesting. The sounds, the images, everything that I perceive. It becomes difficult because then I have to figure out where to focus. Yeah. And I'm not really, I mean, I'm really good at focusing once I decide what to focus on. It's
yeah.
the what to focus on that usually I let my feelings tell me to focus. I don't know if I'm
There.
making any sense here.
Oh, no, this is no, this is really fascinating to me. It sounds to me with that though, there's a fierce aliveness, like there's an appreciation almost for the living, like either relation or connection with anything that where our attention does go. And
Mm.
so that's all I took from that image, was like, or the sense of the bark is interesting, the person in front of me is interesting. I think one of the things that can deaden so much of our experience is if I just have the word tree and then everything I see that fits the parameters of tree becomes tree. I can find that really, I don't know, a real way of draining life or aliveness from life sometimes. When you mention there the where you put your attention is driven or is influenced by what you're feeling, or what your feelings are suggesting, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So if I go back, if I go back into history and I look at the things that I did, and there really wasn't a, you couldn't look at it and say, okay, I understand this. I understand what he's doing. It didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense to my parents. It didn't make any sense to people. I've had friends say to me later in life, I could never do what you do. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, you just stop doing things and start doing something else. I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. Who can do things like that? You know? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know how you guys can do what you do. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. It doesn't make any sense to me. So we're just seeing through different lenses, you know? But if I see something, and if my mind says physically you can do it, like if I see a basketball game and I say, wow, that is so interesting, I would love to play in the NBA. My thinking mind is smart enough to say to me, yeah, look, man, you can't even jump 6 inches off the ground. You're not going to be playing this game. So, but if my thinking mind doesn't say anything to stop me, which, remember, it knows how the social game has evolved and what's going on, it'll say to me, okay, do it. It won't get in my way because it can't find any training data that says to it, you can't do that. It has seen how the world works. And it would have to come back to me with something that says, yeah, you can't be an actor because. It would have to find a because. And it can't, because it has seen what I've seen. It has seen the people that I'm close to be all these different things. And it also comes along and says to me, well, being any of these particular things, yeah, is not going to lead to contentment. Why? Well, because you've seen it. You've seen it through all these people that you know. You've seen it from the rich, from the successful, from the actors, from the professors, from the priests, from the coaches, from the athletes. You've seen that you don't get your feelings by being and becoming something. You get your feelings are in you, just you let them out. They're there. So that, like I said, the whole incoherent thing and all the different models that I get to experience growing up gave me a kind of a different perspective on all of this.
How, just out of interest for you then, how did you let the let the feeling, or did you ever contain the feelings, or did you have an experience of containing them, if you get me? Because from my perspective, this is I think I contained the feelings for quite a time, and then maybe over the last decade, that's been almost like a not getting in their way, like an
Exactly.
allowing, or a not being not being in opposition or resistance to them. For you, was this just, there was something freewheeling in you, or there wasn't something blocking it, or how would you kind of describe that?
Yeah. So I've had people misinterpret how I describe and express letting my feelings out. So they I guess they will look at like children and say, "Oh, so you don't care what other people think, you're completely impulsive." You know, no. I respond to what's going on in my environment in a very intelligent way, right? I mean, animals, we look at animals and we say, well, they're impulsive. No, no, not the way you think they are, right? They're going to approach their environment in a particular way in order to respond to it in a particular way. So they may approach, two dogs may approach each other, and they may be hesitant until they feel each other out, and then they'll let go and play aggressively with each other.
Yeah.
But if they don't sense that that's the appropriate response, they won't. They'll walk away. So, yeah, I have been very aware of how I respond in my environment is going to affect how my environment responds to me through all of these different experiences I've had growing up. And so when I say I let my feelings out, what I mean is what I want inside is what I do
Yeah.
in my life. If that makes sense.
No, that to me is perfectly clear. And there's, as far as I perceive that, then though, there's a sense of attentiveness to your life. Like I always really like the idea that with attention, just not even just attentiveness to what my feelings are suggesting I want right now, but an attention to life itself, um, or in life, it comes with responsibility, because then I also see the consequences of actions in an environment too.
Exactly.
Like, so it's attention without a sense of responsibility doesn't entirely make sense to me. But the idea here of you're attentive to your feelings, and that's a thing driving, then your feelings are driving what you want, then it's not this reckless scattergun thing, or
Right.
just, or even this impulsiveness, or selfishness or something like that. It's just literally being attentive to your inner state or your inner feelings.
Yeah, I love the word responsibility, and I've heard it described before as the ability to respond,
Right.
as opposed to this moral heaviness. We're not talking about that, right? We're talking about if I'm dancing with someone and they start leading, do I have the ability to follow, to respond to what I'm feeling in that moment? Can I do that? Or is this all about me? I'm leading this dance. You're the follower. I'm going to spin you and dip you. And damn it, you just go along for the ride here. This is what this is about. And that's what most people are doing without really understanding that they're doing it, because they can't sense when someone else wants to lead. They're unable to respond because they're not aware of what actually is going on. They're too consumed by their goal and what they're trying to accomplish.
It's just, as you're speaking there, you've got something in me spinning a little bit, in the sense of like just a deep resonance with what you're saying, and like a sense of just the inherent kind of truth or wisdom to what you're pointing to, and then just I don't know, a bizarre feeling of like, geez, this guy's just talking such common sense. Like, like what is the? It's amazing that it could be. It's amazing that we see things, or let's say the wider culture at this point may see things so differently. I think that's where there's a kind of a spinningness in me at the moment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's because we're hooked on getting those feelings that we want by achieving something out in the future.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what's doing it. We're not looking at, even when I talk to people about their goals, you know, and I say, well, what are you after? Yeah. Okay. You've got this goal. So talk to me about why you have this goal. And they'll say, well, because when I get there, then, and then I'll talk to them years later and I'll say, well, did you achieve that goal? And they say, yes. And I said, okay, so you're there. No, I'm not there because I've got a new goal. And when I achieve that goal, then whatever.
Yeah.
They keep thinking this feeling that they want to let out of themselves is something that they have to go get somewhere in the future. And that's the illusion that keeps us trying to get it. That's that little carrot that's hanging out in front of the horse's face, right? I will get these feelings I want. I will get these feelings of just being me and being free. And I can get those. It, I've not seen it happen. I'm waiting to meet someone who got it.
But there's, I've been really noticing this a lot with my daughter at this point is 19 months old, and there's such a joy to just, when you're mentioning even the analogy of dancing and letting somebody lead, of letting her almost decide what playground we're going to or what park we're going to, and then without that desire to fixate on that, like without me knowing where we're going per se.
Mm,
And then also even the sense then of once we're there, not having a plan immediately after it, we're right here. Like it takes that sense of then completely out of the equation. Like there's just so much right here.
yes.
And it sounds so simple or basic, but it's utterly transformational in terms of a relationship with the moment, like a relationship with life itself. Like it becomes, I don't know, there's something about it that becomes utterly abundant. And it's kind of ironic that it could even happen in times where, for me, that some of the things that I may have let go on in the path that I'm on might have seemed more abundant in other ways that I let go of. And not making any of these things mutually exclusive. That's definitely not how I see it.
Right.
But it's staggering just how full the present moment is, or it's staggering just how, I don't know, without that notion of then, just how containing and restraining it is. Like it's really palpable to feel that in the moment. Like, it's one thing to hear you say these words, and then it's another thing just to have a lived experience of it in many different areas I could reflect on. But it's colossally important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that there's your trick right there. So you say, let me let my daughter decide where we're going. And for whatever reason, why that came into your mind, in most cases, that doesn't come into anyone's mind. You see, because they think they know what's right, what should happen, where we should go. And what you did is you prioritized, your intention was relationship to begin with.
Right.
That's it. I know that sounds ridiculously simple, but if you make what's going on about relationship first and foremost, then the next question is, why do I care where we go? Do you see? But
Yeah.
people can't do it because even at work, they get into work. And I remember doing this years ago. I remember saying to someone, don't do it that way. That's not the way it's done. And then when I had the shift inside of me, I realized, why do I care how this person does this?
Right.
They can stand on their head and do it. What is the difference to me what their how is? What they feel they want to do? If it's getting us where we want to go and giving us the relationships that we want, why should I care about the right way of doing something? And who said it was the right way to begin with? Right? Is there a right playground to go to? Which one is it? And then you discover when you start looking at this what I call your delusional wants, you'll start realizing that these are invented. You know, you've made them up, but you can't really explain why the eggs go in the refrigerator in Boston and stay on the counter in Louisiana. All you know is it's right, but you can't tell me why. None of the people that I was surrounded by could tell me why when this little kid said, "Hey, we put these in the refrigerator at home. How come you leave them out on the counter?" They don't know. They have no idea why. They just know this is what we've done. It's a feeling of what's right and what's not right, which is invented.
Can you talk to me more about the prioritizing of relationship and the significance of that in this idea of, or not this idea, but almost in this dance of kind of unwinding some of these wants? Because I think just when you said that there, it gave me goosebumps, and I think it's probably because it resonates quite deeply, and maybe I haven't articulated it myself before. So I just wondering from your perspective, like the significance of prioritizing relationship.
Yeah, that was something that came out of me as I was writing this book. I came to a realization at the end of writing it in the last, it's a small book, but in the last section, that reality is relationship and that we don't see this because first of all, we don't have the ability to look back. Once you get older and you look back, and I say to you, give me the feelings. Where did these feelings come from? They all came from relationship. You with your own inner self doing the things that you wanted to do, you with other people. Even when you talk about the things that you've done in the past, people don't give these just hypothetical concepts and spreadsheet numbers, and they don't talk about their desk and their chair. They talk about Donna and Bob and the thing that you did with this person or that woman or that guy or this kid, or it was all relationship. So you get to the end and you say, well, if it's all relationship, why am I not prioritizing relationship if that's all it is? Why do I think that when I get to the end, see, they don't think about getting to the end. Why do I think as I'm moving through life that I'm going to get these feelings that I want outside of relationship, I guess? I don't think most people think outside of relationship. They just don't think about it. And that's what makes the relationship part of it take a back seat. You know, it's like, why would you have a business, as an example, where, yeah, everybody's doing everything right, but we all hate each other. We go to work every day and we hate what we do. How does that make any sense at all? And so you leave that job because you hated it. You go to another place where everybody's doing everything right, but I hate this place. And we all hate it. It's insanity. What are we doing? Right? And I think it's because we are hypnotized by these delusions of want, by right and wrong, this and that, now and then, and we can't even see what we're doing. I had someone say to me, they called me and said, you think you can work with an executive, that I'm doing some work with their organization, and I think he's lost in these delusions because he's like angry and he gets everybody upset and it's just terrible and terrible environment. And I say, well, he wants to be like that. And this person says to me, because they read the book, yeah, I see that. And I said, okay, does he not want to be like that? And he says, well, I don't think so. I think he wants to be like that. I said, well, what am I going to do? If somebody wants to be like that, that's the way they're going to be. But if you don't, if you can see what's happening and you say, no, I really would like to have an enjoyable dance, you know? Not that there's never any tension. Of course, there's creative tension in anything that you do. But if you're aware of what's happening, then you can look at yourself and say, how am I contributing to this? Because I'm obviously part of it, so I'm contributing to this. But we don't do that. We don't do that at all. We look at everything else and we say, this won't be the way I want it. And this is what I mean about if you look at your life as, say, just 3 general relationships, you with yourself, that has to come first. So your feelings, your physicality, your energy, your aliveness, your spirit. How's that relationship? Now, most people will say, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean? Maybe they'll understand the physical part of it, maybe. But in general, they don't feel it because they're not feeling themselves. They're not feeling their life. So you've got that component. Then you have that relationship with others. How is that dance with others? And then you have the natural world. Those 3 relationships give you all the feelings that you're looking for. All of them. If you dance with it, it'll give you everything you're looking for. Because all the other stuff is basically, I don't want to call it irrelevant, but it's just basically a prop. When you go out and play basketball with friends, that's just a thing for relationship.
Right.
That's all it is. Work is just another thing for relationship. Because we're not leaving here to someplace else, right? This is it. And if we do this in a way that brings everyone alive, because that's what love is wanting other people to thrive and to have that same feeling come out. If we do that, we have a great life, So it's hard. Like I said, when you're obsessed with goals, it's hard to see because your brain is so focused. But once you look back at your life, you can see, oh boy, what happened? How did I miss this? How did I miss it?
Just out of interest, the idea there or the reflection there that this guy in this setting wanted to behave like that. Are we assuming in that scenario that the conditioning is so strong that that's the wants from that have emerged from the conditioning and the thinking mind versus the wants from the feelings, and or is that are you also, or are you alluding to something else in that scenario?
No. So here's the little. This is the paradox. What we're doing is what we want, and that is either based on conditioning, which
Yeah.
we don't have any awareness of. Right. In other words, if I yell and scream and intimidate, people will do what I want them to do.
Right.
So that is you believe that. That's a value that you have, right? But that's based on some conditioning. That's based on learned behavior. It's not necessarily giving you what you want. And then there's the feelings that are in you that have not been conditioned, that were always there. This curious, compassionate, creative, relational essence that's inside of everyone. That's always there. It just gets blocked by this hypnosis. I have people it's the strangest thing. I'll have people say to me all the time, I'll ask them why they do these things they don't want to do, and they'll tell me they have to do them. They use this word have to over and over and over again. And it is just so interesting to hear that, because I can't understand it. And if you stop saying I have to and you start saying I want to, then your mind turns on, because it's passive right now. It's leaving you alone because you're saying I have to. So it's going, oh, okay, he has to leave, leave Mark
Yeah.
alone. He has to. That's fine. He has to. If you say you want to do that, now the mind will turn on, right? So you say, yeah, I want to yell at everyone at work and make everyone miserable. Now your thinking mind will turn on. And because it feels this cognitive dissonance inside of you, and it'll say to you, hey, why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Now you can deep dive into this unconscious behavior and thinking patterns that are going on. And you can look at those, and and that's what meditation is really all about. You can contemplate what's going on here, because I'm doing this. You're just not aware that you're doing it. You're not conscious of it.
Do you know, there's two things, I guess. Just one thing that popped up when you were just saying this now was, I'm living in Berlin now, so I've been learning German the last few years, and I remember always, if I say ich will, it means I want, and then you said, oh no, you don't say you want something. It's much more polite to say ich möchte. So, and we do the same thing with children too. Like, if a child says I want something, we kind of teach it not to say I want.
Right.
I don't know, just that notion came up, and I like, there's something about, I don't know, there's something, it feels like that we're just containing this life. Like we've, I'm not talking about just social etiquette or manners there or something, but it just feels like there's something more behind even that suggestion. And I just find it incredible. It is quite an incredible thing when you start to feel. It is quite an incredible thing to ever have a situation where you may not know what you want. Like, if you're paying attention to your feelings, that's, it's almost like the expression of boredom for me has become a bit of a lightning rod when I hear it, because, like, a bit like you walking into your back garden. Well, how could you be bored if either you can feel or you can pay attention? Like, there's just so much to this life.
Right.
From your perspective, just the sense of, you mentioned meditation there, and just the capacity to contemplate or reflect. What do you sense brings people around to some of these, or reveals, I guess, not transforms people, but what you sense helps people reveal just what really lies beneath some of this conditioning, or these mental structures, or kind of obstacles that they've created?
Yeah. It appears that discomfort and confusion is what drives people to finally want to contemplate, why is this what's going on here? Why am I
Yeah.
feeling anxious all the time? Why am I unhappy? What I don't like is this idea that, and it's an idea, but this idea that, yeah, you spend the first half of your life kind of lost in this conditioned behavior in order to get, your belief is you're going to get these feelings from whatever it is you're doing. And then you finally realize you're not going to. And so you wake up like midlife and you start now contemplating all of this. I just don't like that idea at all. I mean, why waste this beautiful, vital time of your life, this 20s and 30s and 40s, where all of this creative energy is exploding through your body? Why is that all like a waste? Why does that have to go to this conditioned behavior? Why can't it go to this creative, compassionate impulse that's inside of you? Why can't you wake up early? You know?
Yeah.
So I try as hard as I can, especially with any young people that I meet, to I guess to make them uncomfortable so that they go in and say, okay, this guy made me uncomfortable. Why? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Is what he's saying right? Is what and typically I'm not saying anything about right or wrong. I'm saying about them. Why aren't you going inside, seeing what you're doing and asking yourself these questions? Do I really want this? Is this something I want in my life? Interestingly, it was I like the idea of boredom, because I was speaking to my older daughter last week, and she asked me, she said, well, Dad, what do people need then? Do you think, in order for them to start waking up? And I said, well, a big thing they need is boredom.
Right.
And she said, well, why do they need boredom? And I said, well, why would you ever put yourself out into the unknown unless you were bored? I said, when we were in college, we were bored. There was nothing in our dormitory rooms, nothing. A couple of rich kids had like turntables and some albums. But in general, we had to leave that room and venture out into the world with other people in nature. We had to, because we were bored. And that's where the discoveries were made. That's where we learned, right? So if you're not bored, you're not going to venture out. Why? You've got all your stimulation right in your hand, right? Or right on a screen. So that boredom is a big part of it, because it allows you. See, your thinking mind does not want to be bored,
Yeah.
right? And so it's looking for a way out. And what happens is it's going to start grasping at what it knows based on past experience has helped you escape boredom. And it'll just keep recommending that. And if that thing that's helping you escape boredom is keeping you stuck in your little box, your thinking mind thinks that it did its job. It's like, okay, I got rid of the discomfort. And if you look and you say, well, doesn't my thinking mind care about me venturing out and having an exciting aliveness to my reality? No, it does not at all. It wants you to be comfortable. It wants you to be comfortable. And if that's what it takes, then it did its job. And if you can become aware that it's doing that, this is tough, right? Because as we age, we want to slow down. So I can feel my thinking mind sometimes telling me, yeah, you don't need to do that. Why are you going there? Yeah, now, why are you meeting these people? It'll start asking me questions. But see, I know what it's doing. So when I hear it, I do the opposite of what it tells me to do. And by doing the opposite enough times, it will leave you alone. It's kind of like exposure therapy, right? You do it. It worked on my father. My father used to tell me, do this, do that, do this. Finally, he said to my mother, look, this guy is a lost cause. I'm telling him all these things to do. He's not doing them. So he eventually got quiet and he left me alone. He stopped telling me this stuff. It's the same thing with this, AI in your head. It's kind of like automatic AI. It just comes on and tells you things to do and not to do.
I love, though, even just listening to you describe that, because it's it's almost like a dance with your own mind to some degree as well, and even just like, it doesn't feel from this really forceful place of, oh, I'm really going to train my, like, it doesn't sound like training your mind in a strict way, but almost like in a playful, curious way.
Yeah.
Like, I think you made me laugh in the book at one point where you said that your mind told you you couldn't do something while you're actually doing the thing that it told you wasn't possible to do. And I think we can try to almost use willpower against our own minds, or we can just really pay attention to it, and we can get playful with it. Because I think in what I was referring to earlier, and just what you've referred to there, it's not a overpowering of the mind, because that just becomes a real drain on energy. It's just an awareness that
Yeah.
okay, this is what it's conditioned to do. It's actually doing its job. If I get angry at something for doing the job that it's trying to do, that's going to lead to a lot of suffering. That's going to lead to a big energy drain in my life. And it will make life more of a mental process again, which will kind of unwittingly lure you back into the kind of the, I don't want to say the clutches of the thinking mind, because that makes it sound far too like almost like far too much intention behind it, other than the fact that it wants things to be comfortable and to be safe.
Yeah, no, like you're absolutely right. I've kind of run out of them, but I bought a box of these Chinese finger traps. You know those?
Right.
And I will play with if kids. Somebody has some kids walking through the office building or whatever. I'll grab the kids. I'll give them the Chinese finger trap. And you know how it works. You put your fingers in this, and then you try to get out. So you pull both sides, and when you do that, it tightens up, and you can't get your fingers out. And so the only way to get your fingers out are to relax. And that's a perfect point that you made about being playful. When you're being playful, you are relaxed, right? It's like you're not in a struggle with someone or something. You may be in competition, right? But it's not you're not fighting. You're not
Yeah.
struggling because you understand what this is all about. You know the game that's going on here. So when you look at your thinking mind and you say, yeah, you know what? That's a really good tool. When
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to get the stuck mayonnaise jar cap off, my thinking mind says, yeah, bang on the bottom, running under hot water. It's there to help me whenever I need help. The problem is that we've turned this thing on and we've let it run automatically. It's almost like you turn your computer on and AI comes up and starts talking to you on the screen, telling you things to do, how to think, how to feel. You shouldn't be feeling this way. That's not what's right. And the funny thing is when you have stored up energy, this energy wants to engage. It wants to come out. And that's why when people look at all this political stuff that's going on, that by the way was going on in the 70s too, when I graduated college, except we weren't being exposed to it. It wasn't thrown in our face all day long. So it was what it was. We knew we didn't have control over the powers that be, that they were going to negotiate what was going on and that we could have some influence, but we weren't looking at this stuff constantly. Our energy wasn't going there. And that's the thing with this AI thing. If it's always on in your head, you feel this need, the energy feels a need to engage with it, you know? And I mean, think about anxiety, OCD, things like that. That's what's going on. You engage with this thing, and now it just keeps going,
Yeah.
right? Let's go. We're kind of, because it thinks it's helping you eventually get the feelings that you want. If it didn't think that, it would stop. It really, really thinks it's helping you. It's taking care of you. And when you see that, you can look at it and go, okay, this is a friend. But
Yeah.
I shouldn't be letting this friend talk to me constantly all day long, right?
And as you say, like I think this is such an important part of it too. Like we're essentially hoping to, or we're essentially seeking feelings in life. Like even if you wanted, if your idea was that you want all the money and you want all of these things and accolades, you know, maybe that can be a sense of, well, I'd like to feel loved, I'd like to feel appreciated. Like it's generally a feeling of something. It's not just that I want to get the thing because I want the, like, because that would not yield any kind of feeling from it.
Oh no,
And
it's
so
all
there,
feeling. Yeah.
and so there's in this complete kind of contradiction almost of like getting our, letting our mind lead the dance when we already have access to the feelings, and the feelings are here right now and they're not then or whenever this happens or anything like that. So I think there's a huge kind of contradiction to come to terms with there in terms of what's leading. You know, Tom, throughout the course of this conversation of just, you know, even you describing the idea of why do people believe what they believe and why do they do what they do, your stories from upbringing, how you were almost left without a firm place to stand, and also even just your way of perceiving things and how images from the past don't help maintain your kind of stuckness in something and replaying it over and over again. The way of looking at life through a certain sense of almost like aliveness or attributing aliveness to it, and almost a sense as well that you kind of talked about by engaging with the dance and realizing that there's so much kind of out of our control or uncertainty. It almost invites you in to pay more attention to life, because if we don't know where it's going, well, we better pay attention.
Right.
Realizing like the suffering that can come from just the conditioning of our minds, the conditioning of our wants, rather than relying on our feelings to engage with those wants. And then also this beautiful sense that you touched on several times of just being in relationship in life, being in relationship to ourselves, to other people, to nature, and just the extraordinary things that can kind of come from an existence that feels in connection to our own feelings and our own wants. Really curious to ask you the question, Tom, of what is a good life for you?
uh, it's allowing those curious, compassionate, creative feelings that are at our core, our inner spirit, to allow those to emerge how they want to emerge. And to me, I mean, people talk about giving yourself something greater, more noble, more beautiful to do with your life to create meaning. Well, there it is. It's already there. Allowing that beautiful, noble, creative inner spirit out to engage with the world, that hidden potential. I mean, spiritual, the word spirit comes from breath, from vitality, from life. And that's all we want. And we're missing it because it's right here, right now. There's nothing that you have to go get. That's the illusion. That's what we've created that keeps everyone chasing. And we don't need to chase. The good life is letting it out right now, coming alive right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely gorgeous. I must say, the the book Unwinding Want, I thought it was a mixture of something poetic, um, also practical and easy, like almost like an easygoing wisdom to it, that you've realized something that you don't need to shout or or kind of ram down people's throat. And there's just this beautiful kind of practical, insightful wisdom to it as you mosey on through it. And at the end of it, just like your answer there, it seems like such a realization and almost like a love letter to life itself and the connections and the relationship between us all. So, Tom, this has been an absolute joy to have you here on the What is a Good Life podcast today, and I'm extremely grateful for it.
Well, Mark, I am too. And I really love what you do. I think you epitomize that James Baldwin quote that's in the beginning of the book, where he says that the role of the artist, which is what you are and what you're doing right now in this creation, is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see. So I can see that that's what you're up to, and I really appreciate what you do. So thanks.